Got some breaking news and an emergency filing about the SNAP food stamp funding to help those that are below the poverty line, our most fragile population in America. We're talking about babies and kids and disabled people and the elderly. And we have this emergency filing because the federal government filed yesterday a notice telling Judge McConnell in Rhode Island, who ordered that the SNAP payments of $8 billion, or at least a large portion of them, get made immediately, and that he be told that at least by Wednesday that those payments are going to start this week and all administrative and clerical and hurdles have been overcome. When we looked at the filing by Mr. Penn, who works for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't explain why there can't be full funding at $8 billion level to make the payments to 40 million Americans, and doesn't explain why they're not complying with the judge's order to make those payments immediately for the most fragile population in America. How dare they try to wait weeks or months to make these payments? I'm Michael Popok, Democracy Forward, who's got a playlist with us here on Legal AF, has just filed their new emergency motion. I'll have Skye Perryman of Democracy Forward on for an interview on Friday, but let me read to you from their motion, emergency motion they just filed in the last few minutes here on Tuesday on Legal AF. Time is of the essence when it comes to hunger, they write on page 1. 42 million people in this country who rely on Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, for basic nutritional needs, including children, senior citizens, and veterans, are now 4 days into November without any prospect of receiving their SNAP payments for weeks or even, quote unquote, several months, says the government in their filing yesterday. Because of defendant's course of conduct, because this court's order did not contemplate that millions would be deprived of basic nutritional assistance for weeks, let alone months, and indeed made clear that defendants had to expeditiously ensure payments were to be received given the irreparable harm of being deprived of basic nutrition, plaintiffs request that this court act to enforce its temporary restraining order, or in the alternative, grant additional preliminary relief on the ground that the decision to deny full benefits is arbitrary and capricious. How'd we get here? During the shutdown, the Trump administration, first in a series of memos by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, said that they were going to fund SNAP. They weren't going to take advantage of the most disadvantaged people in America. They weren't going to make them a political pawn to score cheap political points. But that all changed from September the 30th till the third week in October, as Donald Trump decided to put pressure on the Democrats by punishing people of hunger. That's a problem. So 2 different groups ran into court. One group representing 23 attorneys general ran into court in front of Judge Talwani. Another group ran into Chief Judge McConnell in Rhode Island, represented by Democracy Forward, a group of public interest groups, church groups, and municipalities. They got 2 different orders, hours apart, but basically come to the same conclusion, that the agency, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, needed to report by yesterday the payments that they were going to make, either full payments, how they were going to make them, and if for some reason they were going to exercise discretion, agency discretion to make less than full payments, explain why and how, and do that immediately. But that's not what they filed, as pointed out by Democracy Forward. Instead, we got a Patrick Penn declaration, whoever that is, the Deputy Undersecretary of Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services, who says on paragraph 29, which is noted in this new filing, that for at least some states, USDA's understanding is that the system changes states must implement to provide the reduced benefit amounts. In other words, they're going to fund only $4.65 billion out of $8 billion. A little bit more than half is all that they were planning to fund. Will take anywhere from a few weeks to up to several months. No, that's in violation of the temporary restraining order, says Democracy Forward in their new filing. You can't do it that way. They also say in their filing, which I'll have up on Legal AF Substack, they also say in their filing that as an administrative agency, the Department of Agriculture is being what's called arbitrary and capricious, which are terms of art, in making their decision that they can't find the additional funding to get to the $8 billion top off in order to make full payment to the most disadvantaged. Think of it this way. You go to the supermarket, you have a basket of things you need to live, to be nourished, to survive, and you only have a little bit more than half that you need to pay it in your pocket. You think you're heading out to the parking lot with your wagon? You're not. And so that's where we're at right now. So what they do is they go through methodically this guy, Mr. Penn's declaration, and they say the decision not to take funds from other programs in order to cover the deficit is arbitrary and capricious. They've done it before. They've made other payments before related to this fund. Go find the money. And your excuse that you're going to have to take it from another child nutrition program to give over to SNAP when it's basically the same group of people doesn't fly. This is what they go on to say on page 1. When this court, Judge McConnell, granted a temporary restraining order making clear that there are sufficient funds available to continue SNAP benefits in full through this month, it gave defendants 2 options: provide full SNAP benefits for the millions of Americans, or provide only partial benefits and expeditiously resolve the administrative and clerical burdens in order to allow payments to start by November the 5th. But they've already signaled in Penn's declaration or affidavit that they're not going to do that and that weeks or months can go by. Here's what they say about the not coming up with the additional $3 or $4 million. In the alternative, this is on page 2, this court should grant a temporary restraining order on the grounds that defendant's decision not to provide full SNAP benefits is arbitrary and capricious. Even though tens of billions of dollars are available for transfer from child nutrition programs funds, even though not tapping into those funds will leave individuals and families without the food assistance they need for months, and even though defendants previously tapped into those funds to keep other programs funded, they have refused to do the same for SNAP. In a declaration, Penn says that he's not going to do it. He's going to conserve the funds. But transferring funds to SNAP does not actually leave child nutrition underfunded now, and in fact poses no risk of leaving insufficient funds for the programs unless the current lapse in appropriations lasts until next summer. That's a theoretical harm. Take the money from one pocket, put it into the other, pay out the $8 billion, and do it by Wednesday. That's what this temporary new request for emergency temporary relief is talking about. And I think they've got a very good judge here with Judge McConnell, because whereas Judge Talwani in Massachusetts under the same sort of complaint, same sort of case, she wanted a filing, which she got, explaining what agency action was going to be taken. I believe Talwani is going to issue her own temporary restraining order around the same grounds sometime later today. Don't be shocked if I come back on Legal AF Substack Live and do a report about a second SNAP funding order. Here's how they put a human dimension to this, of the human suffering in the Democracy Forward papers that just got filed in the last hour or so. On page 8, most urgently, 42 million Americans will receive only partial SNAP benefits and will do so on an unnecessarily delayed timeline. Among these SNAP recipients are individual members of the plaintiff who filed, who rely on SNAP benefits to feed themselves and their families, even though they work part-time or full-time jobs. See, that's the response to idiots in the MAGA world who claim that SNAP is rife with fraud, and therefore we shouldn't make payments to the most deserving in our America. For example, one member who has a seasonal job at a Halloween costume store in North Carolina attested that partial payments will not cover the food her kids need for the entire month, and cutting or delaying her SNAP benefits puts her kids' health in jeopardy. Another works as a hairstylist in Georgia. She already used the last October SNAP payments on October 27th to purchase essential foods for her son, and she's barely able to pay for essential household costs like transportation. And a third is an airport cabin cleaner in Massachusetts who also did not get paid. This is the human suffering that Donald Trump and his administration are causing. And what we have to rely on are the 23 Democratic attorneys general who are filing these cases in federal court in order to benefit all Americans regardless of color, because poverty and hunger know no color. They're colorblind. And organizations like Democracy Forward, who's with us here on Legal AF, has its own playlist. Sky Perryman, the founder, will be with us on Friday with a special interview. We have to rely on them to file their cases. They've filed over 100 cases so far, and they're batting 93% in wins. Attorneys general over 90% in their 50 cases. Got 150 cases right there, all coming together in Massachusetts and in Rhode Island to help Americans and to stop making them a political pawn of Donald Trump trying to score a cheap point against the Democrats while people die on his watch. People are dying on his watch. Whether it's his Health and Human Services Director, RFK Jr., with his crazy crackpot snake oil salesman ideas about America Health, or it's programs like this. So now, don't be surprised if we get a new order. We're certainly going to get a new order. We might get an emergency hearing with Judge McConnell in Rhode Island. At the same time, I'm keeping an eye on Judge Talwani in Massachusetts about how she responds and how the 23 attorneys general respond to this filing that just came in late last night from the Trump administration saying, well, we're going to do partial payment and maybe weeks or months. I don't think Talwani's going to be happy either. She held in abeyance her temporary restraining order until she saw the filing, and now I think she's got the grounds to issue her TRO. And we'll follow it here on Legal AF. Hit the free subscribe button. We've got almost 10,000 new subscribers in the last several days at the intersection of law and politics on our march to 1 million. Find out if you are a subscriber, and if you're not, hit the free subscribe button. Take a receipt. You're now a member of the Legal AF community. Come over to Legal AF Substack. Hit the subscribe button there, the membership button there. Help us with our reporting, our honest commentary, all of our contributors. And we're about to add the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, is going to join us with the playlist here on Legal AF as well. And hit the paid membership if you can swing it for $6.77 a month. And that'll help keep us on the air and protect our First Amendment rights and your own. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touches Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states, and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.